Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reflections with Baba Yusuf. I am your host, Mallam Baba Yusuf. In today's episode, I have one of my brother, my friend, and one of the illustrious sons of Nigeria, a veteran journalist. We call him Prof because of his background in lecturing in the American, colleges and universities. Former spokesperson of the former Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, a highly respected journalist and intellectual. I have with me here Laolu Akande. Good to have you on this program, Laolu.
Thank you so much, Mallam Baba Yusuf, my dear brother and friend. And I've been listening to Reflections with Baba, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So, as one of my earliest episodes, I said, no, I must have Laolu on this,
Thank you so much.
post-podcast for us to speak about Nigeria, following up to your mantra, #Nigeria
will prevail.
and looking at the current administration, how far, and especially some of us got worried with the trajectory of the growth, economy, social development, foreign policy of the administration, and say how far have we fared over 1 year now. A lot of apprehension. All the numbers are not stacking up, as we know. Of course, one may say it's a fraction or factor of the global socio-economic headwinds. But then we all know that we have our local or national problems.
True.
So I was comforted when I heard. First of all, I was a little bit alarmed when President Tinubu, while in China a couple of weeks ago, said, expressed confidence on his team. I was a bit worried, that, are we really going to go with this? Because to be honest, if you want to say the truth, Laolu, you know that the input of the ministers is the output of Mr. President.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Performance is measured by outcomes and results, not by events. So I was a bit worried. But then during the 1st of October, speech to Nigerians, President Tinubu mentioned that he would rejig his cabinet. So I was happy. In fact, I went on my weekly column Friday on the Nation back page to say, yes, Mr. President, this is the way to go. We are happy now that we want to rejig your cabinet, because whether we like it or not, there's more to be done by this administration. I don't know, what's your take on that?
Well, I was also, I think the idea of, and actually it was Mr. Bayo Ononuga, who I think it was after a fake meeting or so that said that, yes, the president was thinking of a rejig of the cabinet. Now, it's gratifying to know that he wanted to do that. But if you look at it again, between the time he said that and now, nothing has happened. And that's like 3 weeks already.
Yeah.
So it's like it has just created a buzz. I think the president should have acted very quickly. When Mr. Ononuga made that disclosure, he should have acted quickly and do what he needed to do. Because when you leave that kind of time, there's going to be a lot of pressure. Even your ministers will be in panic mode. And, I think in this town, right here in FCT, there's been quite a lot of buzz. Some of them are afraid and panicking. Am I going to be sacked and all of that? And it's 3 weeks already. So that itself might affect even their work. If you don't feel that you're going to
distraction,
it's going to distract you. So I would have loved that Mr. President didn't waste a lot of time. If you're going to rejig your cabinet, just go ahead and do it. By the time your spokesperson comes out to say that yes, the president is going to do it, you must be close
to execute.
Execute. Otherwise, you saw, our very dear sister, trying to prove our words, reading a poem.
Yes. Our amiable minister of culture and creative.
Very, otherwise, our very glamorous and, quite, solid, gentle lady. But reading a poem is not a proof of your performance.
I totally agree with you, Laolu. I was actually taken aback because thank you for landing with that. When I saw it, and I remembered the Honorable Minister Hannat Musa coming out with that poem, build up to the inauguration of President. Even after, it was a mantra, which is okay. And a lot of people were saying, Mr. President, rewarded her with the ministry. But a lot of them didn't know that she was actually active during the campaign days, which is fine. But campaigns have gone.
Right.
We are talking about delivery now. We are talking about performance.
Right.
And I totally agree with you. The poem is not enough.
Yeah.
We want to hear deliverables. We want to hear achievements. We want to hear, what have been done in numbers, in numerals, and tangible and intangible values. And that is what we expect a lot of these ministers to have been demonstrating. In fact, to the extent that your work should be speaking for you. For example, we hear, a lot of people speak about, Minister of FCT and some weakest performance, and a couple of other ministers. At least you can hold one or two things to show, to say they've done something.
Right.
But, I dare say, as far as I'm concerned, the value of the impact of administration shouldn't be a fraction of performance of a minister or two, but, a collection of performance of the whole.
Broad.
That should be what should show the impact, tangible and intangible.
Right.
And then who else are the better people to evaluate performance than the citizens, than the electorate, Laolu? What is your take with regards to the self-appraisal of the team? We have an office led by Hajia Hadiza, Bala Muhammad. How has that office, in your opinion, really impacted in pushing the ministers to deliver? Has it really made any impact? Can you say it has done so?
The thing about the role of Hadiza Bala Usman, in my view, is that so she works for the president. She's the special advisor, I think, for policy coordination.
Yes.
And during the swearing-in of the ministers, the president did say that there's going to be KPIs and the monitoring and all of that, So, and I think that was the president also hinted that Hadiza Bala Usman was going to play a role in that monitoring and stuff. Now, I don't know that we can measure our work by whether she communicates with us or not, because the public, because I don't know whether the president wants her to communicate publicly.
Yes.
So we have to take the buck away from her to the president and say, well, Mr. President, we haven't seen any kind of quarterly reports about the ministers. The ministers were hired sometimes August in 2023. This is now October, so we've had clearly more than 12 months.
We're in the last quarter.
We've not had a quarterly review. We've not had half-yearly review. Now we have even gone past 1 year review. We can ask the president and say, sir, what is the job of Hajia, Hadiza? Because we don't want to take Hajia Hadiza to task because she works for you.
She might have even done her job and submitted to Mr. President, to be honest. In fairness,
she might have, But I will say on your show that there's a boss, in this town that the president has been consulting quite a bit lately with our sister Hadiza, and that is part of what built the expectation that there would be
a cabinet
reshuffle before Mr. Onuga now came out to say yes, the president is doing that. So let's just give her a benefit of the doubt that maybe she has been doing her job. But I think it is ideal that if the president says, look, you are in charge of coordination, it's ideal to have a quarterly or at least half-yearly kind of public assessment, but it's the president's call.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you that it's the president's call. He is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He is the person that we elected. Whether you voted for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu or you did not, indeed, the outcome is he is our president.
Yes.
And it is our responsibility to hold him to task,
right,
to deliver, the good dividends of democracy as he promised, until a time comes that there will be another election. And of course, to understand that we are doing this because we want the best for the country, and of course, keeping
Absolutely.
the feet of leaders, warm is what will keep them, enable them to also transfer that to their team so that the whole team will deliver.
Absolutely.
To wrap it up, what is your expectation of with regards to the reshufflement? Peradventure, there will be some shakeups. What do you expect, that should bring some kind of more drive for delivery in this cabinet?
The number one expectation that I have, and I hope that the president really understands this, is to sort out the issue with the poverty alleviation, humanitarian and poverty alleviation ministry. Look, the level of poverty in our country is so significant that I don't know why the president has not conclusively resolved the matter. What happened, about that scandal that involved Dr. Betta Edu? What's the conclusion? Who is the new minister? How are we taking care of poverty alleviation in our country? It's not a good thing to keep that ministry without a minister for how many months now? So that's the first thing that I hope he will sort out. And then we go to the core economy. Where we are now, the president wants a deregulated oil sector, oil and gas sector. Now the prices are, seeming to be market reflecting. And then, we have the naira, the how do you call it now? The forex market has also been floated, and we have taken quite a hit.
A hit,
We have taken a hit with the combination of both. We also have, the rise in the tariffs, electricity tariffs. So my point is that those are all areas where the president needs to look at the direction that he has given his ministers to pursue. We need. I don't disagree with the deregulation of oil and gas. I think the removal of the subsidy, I think it makes sense. But in the issue of the floating of the naira, I think yes, we should float the naira, but I think there should be some kind of a managed float.
Yes.
Because the thing dumped. Went down from 700. To today is about 1,600.
That's correct.
That's it. That's really.
And the shock effect is massive.
And then when you now combine that with the removal of subsidy, look at the impact that it has on transportation. Look at the impact that it has on food prices. We have double digit inflation. And
rising
food.
Yes.
So I'm thinking that what is the president going to say to those ministers in charge of those areas? In order to kind of soften the situation, and I'm not talking about palliatives, so that is that for the core economy. And then in the area of infrastructure, we want to look at what is happening, in terms of works, aviation. Of course, we talked about power already, in industry.
Health.
No, I'm coming to that. So are we having enough activity in infrastructure, in industry, in such a way that can actually
trigger production?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Have we been able to do that in over 1 year that you have those ministers there? And then when you come to human capital development, area of education, health, and now even youth, what is happening in that area? Now this is not an exclusive list area for federal government. So what is the federal government doing to, provoke the state governments to take care of education? In a lot of our schools, as a matter of fact, my brother Mallam, public education is gone.
I agree. It's pathetic.
So what is the role of the federal government? I concede that it's essentially state government responsibility. Yes. But the federal government must be doing something to calibrate some kind of revival of public education in Nigeria. Many of us
at that level.
Yes, at that level.
Because even our tertiary institution is in decay.
So
the public sector.
So it doesn't look very good that what we're talking about in education is how to limit 15-year-old.
Which in my opinion is
whatever the merit of that argument, we're talking about more fundamental, more urgent problems in the human capital development sector.
Absolutely.
Than for us to just be, to be trying to say, okay, if you are 15, you have to wait another 2 years before you can go. I mean, is that the
That's
next
not
issue?
the issue, yes.
Exactly. These are my.
Those are very thought-provoking contributions, Prof. I really appreciate. Totally aligned with what you said, and just to add it as a capping, remark that indeed, with all Prof you have said, there is need for Mr. President. I have said it in my columns, and I've said it in various fora, along with other voices. It is time for Mr. President. It's good timing for Mr. President to go back to the drawing board and re-strategize. Mr. President has tested strategy, has tested policies since he came into this administration. It's time to do a review and come up with better strategies going forward, because obviously some of these policies are not working or they require review or a rethink. But indeed, what is also more important is going forward, Mr. President, round pegs and round holes. Unless there are round pegs and round holes, the strategic thrust of Mr. President will not have that push. Will not be able to deliver. And also there should be, alignment of objectives, alignment of policies, alignment of direction to ensure that we are able to head in the right direction to deliver the promised dividends of democracy.
And one last thing, although I see that our time is fast spent, I think the area of foreign affairs, once we've sorted out core economy, infrastructure, human capital development, and of course security, but I don't think security is so much a cabinet issue. It's more of the police and the military, that's why we are not talking about it in the cabinet.
Yes. In fact, we are going to speak on it especially.
Exactly. Now, but the foreign affairs, there's a major gap in our foreign affairs.
Totally agree.
Because we don't have ambassadors. Mallam,
it's a huge gap there.
It's a huge gap. Now the vice president representing the president at the UN General Assembly, and the issue of having African nations become a permanent member of the Security Council is alive now.
Yes,
it's about to happen.
Absolutely.
We don't have an ambassador in New York.
We don't
have an ambassador in Washington,
UK.
DC. We don't have an ambassador in London. We don't have an ambassador in Paris. We don't have an ambassador in China.
Yes.
Those are the big places. We don't even have ambassadors in African countries so that we can rally around and say that, look, if there are going to be 2 African seats, Nigeria ought to get
especially when we have brothers and sister African nations also competing for the
same. And I'm wondering, Mallam, that is it because the president doesn't have does president have an issue? Does he want to change the Minister of Foreign Affairs? Because how can you have a Minister of Foreign Affairs for 1 year who has not told Mr. President that you have to appoint ambassadors
and demonstrate the importance of that?
And I'm wondering, okay, is it, so if I put up my journalistic cap, I would say maybe the president wants to take another, maybe he wants to hire another foreign affairs minister, because it doesn't make sense to me. Even when you say that, we don't have money, we can't hire 100 ambassadors. Okay, but there are key places. You try and do 10 or 15 or 20. You can't leave Nigeria without ambassadors for almost 1 year. Mallam, nobody does that.
In fact, Prof, what you say is instructive, because it's not even about, it is even unheard of for us to be pursuing a permanent seat at the Security Council at the UN and other global positioning, strategic positionings.
Right.
And we are talking about funding to fund our, envoys. And this should not be heard. But Nigeria is priding itself as a giant of Africa, blah, blah, blah. This should be, and I think for whatever reason, without prejudice to whatever reason Mr. President has, this should be one of the core priorities. Foreign, policy and foreign strategic engagement trust is the cornerstone of the progress of any country.
True.
And based on the standing of Nigeria in the scheme of things globally today, whether it is continental, sub-regional, or global, it is unheard of that we are still yet to have presidents. To have envoys, represented. Like you said, we can even face the deployment. And I think most likely there's a lot of political consideration, and I think Mr. President, we seize this opportunity to tell Mr. President that he should downplay political considerations in this appointment, to look at professionalism, to look at meritocracy, because the foreign engagement is a critical success factor, to achieving our national, socio-economic policies.
Right.
He has been doing a lot with regards to foreign direct investment and all
Right.
that. So you right on point on that. We hope to see, but like you said, maybe the confidence on the minister, because he is a career diplomat, sort of.
Yeah.
He should be able to convince with the president with regards to the importance of this. But whether the minister stays or not, like you said earlier, the box stays on Mr. President's
Absolutely.
table. Mr. President doesn't want to be playing the role of the ambassadors, because he is beginning to do that because of the lack of those ambassadors in those locations. I want to thank you very much, Prof, for being on this
thank you so much.
Today. We look forward to having more of you.
Let's do this often.
We should definitely do that. Yes, especially because this podcast is a podcast that will be driven along some very clearly defined objectives. For a better Nigeria, for a better Africa, to be more informative, more engaging on an objective platform level. And definitely we'll be doing more of that. I want to say thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much, listeners, for having time to listen to us. We look forward to having to engage you again another Sunday next week. Until we come your way again, thank you for listening and have a good day.